Elias, a seasoned fisherman with decades of experience on the sea, thought he'd seen it all. But during a recent fishing trip, he stumbled upon an unknown island not charted on any of his maps. Feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation, he decided to explore. Moments after stepping onto the shoreline, his face drained of color. With trembling hands, he quickly dialed 911. However, his call was not coming through. He checked his phone and realized that there was no signal on the island. What was he going to do now? He had two options: leave right now and go as far away from this island as possible, or stay and try to figure out what happened here. Normally, Elias would have gone with option 1. However, on this particular day, he was feeling quite adventurous. He decided to take a look around on the shore, but not go deeper into the island yet. It would be best if he stayed close to his boat, just in case he needed to leave quickly. You see, what he found on the island was something that terrified him. It was unlike anything that he had never seen before, only in movies. But that didn't count, of course. It was something that told him, "Elias, it is dangerous to stay here." But Elias had been looking for an adventure, and here it was. As he looked around, he realized that he might not be alone there. However, that wasn't what bothered him the most. While he slowly explored the shore, keeping an eye out for anyone or anything appearing, he couldn't help but wonder how he had not come across this island before. He had driven his boat in this area countless times, but he had never noticed it. Suddenly, he felt something crack under his foot. At first, he thought it was probably just a twig or something, but when he saw what it really was, he wanted to scream. He could not believe this, but he had just stepped on a bone. He couldn't tell if it was human or if it belonged to an animal, but it was definitely a bone. "Okay, this is it. I'm leaving this place," he said to himself. But as he was walking back to the boat, he realized he would probably stay here a bit longer than he first thought. The sky had gotten dark, and the strong wind was making waves on the surface of the ocean. A storm was brewing. Elias's boat wasn't in the best condition anymore, and he wasn't sure whether it would last the entire trip back home in this weather. He didn't like the idea of staying on the island much longer, but he preferred that over getting shipwrecked in the middle of the ocean with no other way of going home. He was a good swimmer, but he wouldn't be able to make it home all the way from here without taking any breaks. So the decision was made. He was staying. As the rain slowly started falling from the sky, Elias looked around and realized that he needed to go inside the forest. Out here, on the beach, there was nowhere to find shelter, and from the looks of it, the rain would be pouring down soon. He sighed, thinking, "Why did I have to get myself in this mess? I wanted an adventure. Well, here it is." As he made his way closer to the edge of the forest, he didn't know what or who might be hiding in there, but it was definitely dangerous. His discovery on the beach told him that Elias was glad that he had brought his knife with him. It made him feel just a little bit safer, knowing that he could protect himself if he needed to. He took a deep breath and he stepped into the forest, hoping he would make it out of there alive. He wandered around, looking for a place to hide, and he couldn't help but be amazed by all the beauty that surrounded him. Everywhere he looked, he saw beautiful plants and flowers that almost made him forget about what he had seen on the beach, only minutes away. He continued his journey deeper inside the forest until he finally spotted something where he could hide from the rain. However, he wasn't as happy about finding this shelter as you'd expect him to be. It was a man-made hut constructed of leaves and broken branches. He froze, weighing his options and thinking about whether he should go closer to this hut or not. What if whoever had made it was hiding somewhere near here? What if they showed up while he was inside? And the question that kept repeating itself in his head: what if? This was made by the same person who had left those horrendous things he found on the beach. Elias could have stayed there for another hour, thinking about what he should do, but it was raining really hard right now, so he decided just to do it. He ran to the hut and sat down under it. He hoped the storm would pass soon and he could go home. While he waited for the storm to blow over, he kept looking around, scared that someone would sneak up on him and attack him. The rain was deafening, and if anyone approached him, he definitely would not be able to hear them. He never should have ignored those warnings he had found at the beach. You see, the things he had seen were some weird kind of sculptures with messages on them. They said things like, "Leave! Do not come closer! Go away!" And, the scariest of them all, "Stay here and risk your life." And these messages were all painted red. It had looked a lot like blood to Elias. The more he thought about it, the more paranoid he became. Whoever had made those signs would probably not be afraid to attack him, and he felt like he was being watched the entire time. It wasn't a comfortable feeling. Yes, it had been his own decision to ignore the signs and stay on the island, but he had only wanted to check out the beach. He never planned on getting this deep inside the forest, and now he was stuck here, waiting for the rain to pass. He felt like an easy prey. Luckily, the rain soon stopped and the skies cleared up. The sun shone through the trees and the chirping of birds filled the air, and immediately everything felt less serious and scary. However, it was then that Elias heard something that made the blood freeze in his veins. Footsteps. His feet started moving before he even finished the thought in his head. He ran away from the sound as fast as he could. He didn't want this person, or these persons, to see him because, quite honestly, he didn't know if he would survive that. Their signs had been very clear. He ran and ran until he ran out of breath, finally coming to a stop and resting his hands on his knees, filling his lungs with air again. He stood there for a minute, making sure that whoever he had heard hadn't followed him here, and when he heard nothing else except for his own breathing, he was finally able to relax just a little bit. However, that feeling didn't last for long. As he looked around, he realized that he had no idea where he was or where he had come from, which also meant that he had no idea of how to return to the beach. He was lost. Elias understood that he was in trouble. He tried to calm himself down and think of a plan. Surely there had to be a way to make it out of here. "Okay, no big deal. This is fine. If I just walk into a straight line, I'll have to get to the edge of the forest at some point, right?" he said. He decided that that was exactly what he would do, and once he made it out of the forest, which hopefully wouldn't take too long, he would go looking for his boat and leave this island, with no intention of ever returning to it. He tried to stay positive, but that was difficult. This wasn't the first time he'd been on an uninhabited island, and he knew his way around the rainforests in this area quite well. However, it was the first time that he was lost in a forest while fearing for his own life. Well, there's a first time for everything, he told himself, trying to lighten his own mood. Elias stood there, hopeless, as he looked around, trying to determine which direction to go in. However, everything looked the same to him, and he had absolutely no idea which way was the best to go. So he just started walking in a random direction and decided to stick to it. Eventually, he would find his way out, of course. But this moment right here was where he made a crucial mistake. He had been really close to the beach where he'd left his boat, but he decided to go in the wrong direction, which would only lead him deeper into the forest. Of course, he had no idea about this, and he would probably never even realize that he had been this close to finding his boat in the first place. Ironically enough, he felt determined to make his way out as he headed directly towards the thing. Or should I say, the someone he was trying to avoid. He walked in a straight line the best way he could, but occasionally his way was blocked by a huge tree or a lake. However, he just made his way around the obstacle and continued on the other side. He felt confident that he was getting closer to the beach when, in reality, he was only going further away from it. Elias started to get a bit worried when he realized that he had been walking for about half an hour, but he still hadn't seen a flash of the blue sea through the trees. And his worries were piqued when he spotted a smudge of the red paint. Or was it blood? On a tree. I cannot turn back now. I've been walking in this same direction for so long, I have to be getting closer. I must continue, he told himself. He failed to notice that it was slowly getting dark now, and it wouldn't take long before he couldn't see a thing anymore. Elias's curiosity was piqued. Who was this man? And more importantly, did he know a way off the island? With these questions burning in his mind, Elias decided to follow the stranger discreetly. He kept a safe distance, ensuring he was always hidden behind trees or bushes. Every so often, he'd catch glimpses of the man, confirming he was on the right track. The journey wasn't without its challenges. At one point, Elias stepped on a dry twig, the crack echoing louder than he would have liked. He froze, watching the man's reaction. The stranger paused momentarily, looking around, but then continued on his path. Another time, Elias almost sneezed, managing to muffle the sound just in time. With every close call, Elias's heart raced, but he was determined to find out more about this mysterious islander. As Elias continued his pursuit, he noticed peculiar markings on some of the trees. They were subtle, a scratch here, a tied leaf there. It became evident that these were the man's way of navigating the dense forest. Elias marveled at the ingenuity. The island might have been uncharted on modern maps, but this man had created his own system of navigation, marking paths and perhaps even significant locations. Suddenly, the tranquility of the forest was shattered. The man had stopped and turned around, his eyes scanning the surroundings. Before Elias could react, the man had an arrow nocked and aimed directly at him. The sharp point gleamed menacingly in the dim light. "Who are you?" the man demanded, his voice echoing the threat of his weapon. Elias, heart-pounding, realized he was no longer the observer, but the observed. Frozen in place with the arrow aimed at him, Elias found his voice. "I mean no harm," he began, his voice shaky but sincere. "I'm just a fisherman who stumbled upon this island. I saw no signs of habitation and was curious. All I want is to find my way back to my boat and leave." His eyes pleaded with the man, hoping to convey his genuine innocence and desperation to return to the familiar. The man's eyes narrowed, the arrow still unwavering. "Many have come before you claiming innocence," he replied coldly. "How did you find this place? Who sent you?" Elias could sense the deep-rooted distrust in the man's voice. It was evident that the island held secrets, and its inhabitants were wary of outsiders. "I swear, it was pure accident," Elias responded, hoping to alleviate the man's suspicions. Without another word, the man lowered his bow and swiftly approached Elias. Before he could react, his hands were tied securely behind his back with a rough vine. The man gestured for Elias to walk ahead of him. With each step, Elias felt the weight of uncertainty. Where was he being taken? And what awaited him there? As they ventured deeper into the island, Elias began to hear faint sounds that contradicted the isolation he had initially perceived. The distant laughter of children playing, the murmur of conversations, and the rhythmic clinking of tools at work reached his ears. The sounds grew louder and more distinct, painting a picture of a thriving community hidden within the island's dense foliage. Emerging from the thick trees, Elias was met with a sight that left him in awe. A sprawling camp lay before him, dotted with tents and huts made of natural materials. People moved about, engrossed in various activities, from cooking to crafting. Children ran around, their laughter filling the air. It was a harmonious community, living off the grid, away from the modern world's chaos. Elias realized he had stumbled upon a secret haven, and his journey on the island was far from over. As Elias was led into the heart of the camp, a murmur spread among the island's inhabitants. Children paused in their play, and adults set aside their tasks, their eyes fixed on the stranger in their midst. Whispers filled the air, a mix of curiosity and caution. Some faces showed intrigue, while others displayed wariness. Elias felt dozens of eyes on him, each trying to decipher the story of the outsider who had breached their hidden sanctuary. From the crowd, a woman with a commanding presence stepped forward. Her gaze was sharp, her posture confident. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice echoing authority. Elias could tell she was the leader, the one who held the community's respect and trust. "And how did you find our island?" she continued, her eyes searching Elias's for any hint of deceit. Taking a deep breath, Elias began his tale. "My name is Elias. I'm a fisherman who sailed these waters for decades." He spoke of the day's unexpected discovery, his curiosity, and the unsettling signs he found on the beach. "I never intended to intrude," he concluded. "I just wanted to explore and then leave." His voice carried sincerity, hoping they'd understand his innocent intentions. The leader nodded, signaling two men who led Elias to a corner of the camp. They pointed to a makeshift tent, indicating he should rest there for the night. As Elias settled in, he felt the weight of the community's gaze. Even in the dimming light, he could sense figures watching him, ensuring he didn't attempt any mischief. The sounds of the island's nightlife began, but Elias's mind raced, wondering what the next day would bring. The following morning, Elias awoke to the rhythmic routines of the islanders. He watched as men and women expertly cast nets into the sea, pulling in bountiful catches. Children assisted in gathering fruits and vegetables, while others crafted tools and mended huts. The community moved in harmony, each individual playing a role in their self-sustained life. Despite his uncertain situation, Elias couldn't help but admire the simplicity and unity of their existence. The leader, after conferring with a council of elders, turned her gaze back to Elias. "We've decided," she began, her voice firm yet not unkind, "to test your sincerity. If you truly mean no harm, you will prove it." Elias nodded, understanding the need for caution in such a secluded community. The leader's eyes held a challenge, but also a glimmer of hope that he might indeed be genuine. Elias was presented with a series of tasks. First, he was to mend a damaged fishing net, a skill every islander possessed. Next, he was to gather specific fruits and herbs from the forest, each with its own significance to the community. Lastly, he was to light a fire using only the primitive tools provided. Each task was designed not just to test his skills, but his patience, resourcefulness, and respect for their way of life. The island, while beautiful, posed its own set of challenges. The terrain was unpredictable, with sudden drops and slippery paths. The dense foliage often hid thorny plants or camouflaged pitfalls. Identifying the edible plants from the poisonous ones was a game of memory and attention to detail. Each step of Elias's journey was a testament to the islander's resilience and adaptability. Now, despite the sweat on his brow and the scratches on his arms, Elias pressed on. He remembered the intricate patterns of the fishing net, carefully selecting the right plants and patiently striking stones until sparks flew. With each completed task, his determination grew. He wasn't just proving his innocence, he was earning the respect of a community he had come to admire. As Elias worked, some islanders approached, sharing snippets of their personal stories. He heard tales of escape from the bustling modern world, of seeking solace in nature, and of finding unity in a shared purpose. Each story was a window into the soul of the community, revealing the deep-rooted reasons they chose isolation. Through their narratives, Elias began to understand the true essence of the island and its inhabitants. The leader approached Elias with a solemn expression. "Your final task," she began, "is to find your way back to the beach from where you came, without any guidance." Elias gulped, realizing the enormity of the challenge. The island's vastness and dense foliage made it easy to lose one's way. But he nodded in acceptance, determined to prove himself one last time. Drawing upon the knowledge he'd gained, Elias began his trek. He recalled the subtle markers the islanders used for navigation, the distinct calls of certain birds that frequented the coastal areas, and the direction of the wind carrying the scent of salt water. Each step was taken with deliberation, each choice a culmination of his observations and interactions with the islanders. The island, while serene, was not without its perils. At one point, Elias stumbled upon a snake, Its hiss was a clear warning. Another time, he found himself on the edge of a cliff, requiring a careful detour. The dense forest also concealed quicksand pits, which Elias narrowly avoided. With every danger he evaded, he grew more vigilant, understanding that the island's beauty was intertwined with its wild unpredictability. After what felt like hours, the familiar sound of waves crashing reached Elias's ears. Pushing through a final thicket, he found himself on the very beach where his adventure began. Relief washed over him as he saw his boat anchored in the distance. He had successfully navigated the island's challenges, proving not only his resourcefulness, but also his deep respect for the islanders' way of life. Upon his return to the camp, Elias was met with a mix of admiration and skepticism. The islanders gathered, discussing his achievements and failures in hushed tones. The leader, after listening to the community's input, stepped forward. "Elias," she began, her voice echoing the collective sentiment, "you have proven yourself in ways we did not anticipate. Now, we must decide your fate, knowing the weight it carries for our future and yours." The leader, after a long pause, finally spoke. "Elias, you have shown respect, understanding, and resilience. We have decided to let you go." A murmur of agreement spread among the islanders. Some approached Elias, shaking his hand or patting his back, their initial suspicion replaced by a genuine warmth. The children, curious as ever, came forward with shy smiles, their innocence contrasting the island's mysterious aura. Before his departure, the leader beckoned Elias closer. "There's a reason we cherish our solitude," she began. She spoke of a sacred pact made generations ago to protect the island's unique ecosystem and the spiritual connection they felt to the land. The outside world, with its relentless pace, would never understand our bond with this place, she whispered. Elias nodded, realizing the gravity of their secret and the importance of preserving it. As Elias prepared to leave, the islanders presented him with supplies, fresh fruits, water, and fish for his journey. They also gave him a handcrafted pendant, a symbol of the island's spirit. "To remember us by," the leader said, her eyes glistening. Elias was overwhelmed by their generosity, understanding that these tokens were not just gifts, but a piece of their heart. With the supplies secured, Elias set to work repairing his boat, using techniques he'd observed during his stay. As he pushed off from the shore, the islanders gathered, waving and shouting their goodbyes. The wind caught the sails, and Elias's boat began its journey back to the known world, leaving behind the enigmatic island and its even more mysterious inhabitants. As the island's silhouette diminished on the horizon, Elias sat at the helm, lost in thought. The unexpected detour had turned into a life-altering experience. He pondered the lessons he'd learned, the friendships he'd forged, and the secret he now bore. The vast ocean around him seemed like a metaphor for the endless possibilities life offered. With a deep breath, he set his course, carrying with him memories of an island untouched by time. The familiar coastline emerged on the horizon, bringing with it a rush of relief. As Elias anchored his boat at the familiar dock, the weight of his journey truly hit him. The bustling port, the chatter of townsfolk, and the scent of home-cooked meals filled the air. Stepping onto solid ground, he felt a profound gratitude, not just for his safe return, but for the unexpected detour that had enriched his life. Friends and fellow fishermen surrounded Elias, curious about his prolonged absence. They prodded him for tales of his journey, expecting thrilling stories of storms and sea monsters. But Elias, remembering his promise, kept the island's secret close to his heart. He shared tales of rough seas and equipment malfunctions, leaving out the magical interlude that had transformed his voyage. Days turned into weeks, but the memories of the island remained fresh in Elias's mind. He'd often find himself gazing at the horizon, lost in thoughts of the pristine beaches, dense forests, and the warm-hearted islanders. The handcrafted pendant, which he wore around his neck, served as a constant reminder of the lessons and love he'd received from that hidden paradise. The Elias that returned was not the same man who had set out on that fateful fishing trip. He found joy in the little moments, the chirping of birds at dawn, the laughter of children playing, and the simple pleasure of a meal shared with loved ones. The island had taught him the value of community, connection, and the beauty of a life lived in harmony with nature. As the days passed, a new restlessness grew within Elias. The vast sea called out to him once more, promising new adventures. But this time, he set out with a deeper understanding and respect for the mysteries it held. With the wind in his sails and the island's pendant close to his heart, Elias embarked on a new journey, forever changed by the island that remained hidden from the world.